So much, everyone, for joining us today, and welcome to our second webinar on the second journey, taking those first steps in 2025. And today we wanted to share some stories from myself, Ben and Dan about our second journey, discuss how to take those first steps, and also hear from some of you. So for those that didn't join us back in July, I'm Nicola. I quit full-time work at the end of 22, taking a leap into the unknown, my second journey. And cue major panic and meltdown, racing around for that first month like a whirling dervish. Got a job in the local cafe and a bar because I decided that I was totally unemployable. Otherwise, I was never going to get another job in the marketing startup space. And 2 years on, I'm in quite a different space, doing the work I want to be doing with the people I want to be working with. But it has definitely been quite the roller coaster and still is to some extent. But I definitely wouldn't be here where I am without my second journey wise men, Dan and Ben. So, Dan, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dan, and I started my second journey I started a company called Unbound, which is a publishing platform. I'm a writer originally, but I started a publisher in 2011, and I ran it for sort of 11, 12 years. And essentially, the more and more successful I appeared to other people, the less and less successful I felt in my own brain, essentially. Um, and so I didn't crack up because I discovered running my business that the only way I could make it like interesting was to go on a sort of journey of self-improvement. And I had this idea that everybody tells you how to run a company, but no one tells you how to run yourself while you're running a company. And I sort of discovered that true leadership starts by leading yourself. So I was in quite a good headspace, and I could recognize that the business wasn't working for me anymore. But I left in April 2002, so I'm coming up to 3 years. Um, and I have 4 children. I was the sole breadwinner. It was a massive thing for me to do. I felt like I was being unbelievably self-indulgent. Everyone around me told me I was being mad. And it's that weird thing where everyone around you tells you you're being stupid, but you have never been more certain that something was right in your whole life. And as I'm sure we'll discuss, because I know Nicola and Ben feel this too, a huge part of the second journey is trusting your own judgment in the face of society and friends and everybody around you that expresses their love for you by worrying or judging. Um, and that's been a really hard element of it, is how do you trust yourself? Um, but that's kind of what I've been doing. So the last 6 months particularly, I've been really doing that in the sense that I've completely neglected to earn money really in a kind of overtly planned way. And I've been completely leaning into fulfillment and meaning, relationships and all that stuff, which isn't to say I haven't earned money. And I've had some good stuff. One of my books won an award, which was obviously really exciting. Um, and I finished the novel I've been writing, which I've spent 7 years working on. And I went on an amazing road trip. I'll talk about that very briefly, then I will shut up. But I went at the end of the novel, I realized I wanted to go to all the physical locations where the novel was set because I wanted to kind of imbue myself in the landscape. I wanted to be in the landscape where my characters were going to be. And I had this kind of 6 day trip. And I didn't really sleep very much because I had to drive so far, and I didn't eat very much, and I didn't listen to music, and I entered into this kind of crazy altered state where I wasn't hallucinating, but I started to inhabit myself in a very different way. And I spoke to Ben about it, and he said, "Oh, dude, you just did ayahuasca without taking any drugs." And I had this kind of like crazy week-long communing with the landscape, creative vibe thing, which I would never have even considered doing in my business. And it's immediately in my top 3 things I've ever done in my life. Um, and so that's kind of how I'm learning to trust myself, is that I'm leaning in, I'm doing some, on the face of it, strange things. But the kind of buzz I'm getting back is giving me gradually more and more confidence to keep doing it. But as we'll discuss, it's a constant battle. I had a wobble 2 weekends ago where I was like, oh fuck, what am I doing? This is a complete disaster. Um, but I'm learning tools which are helping me readjust when that happens and how to get myself out of the wobble in a way that I would never have been able to do before because I was too weak mentally, because I was doing the things that everybody else thought I should do rather than what I thought I should do. And I've been on a kind of, I call it internal promotion. I've been giving myself an internal promotion for the last nearly 3 years, where I'm sort of expanding my sense of who I am and what I'm capable of. And that's really what my second journey is teaching me.
I love that internal promotion. Ben?
Yeah, thanks. Hi, everyone. For those that joined us previously, good to see you again. And for those that are brand new, welcome in. I've been, my second journey started around about, or the initiation was about 10 years ago. I went into fashion and was a tailor dressmaker. And that all came because when I was 16, 14, 15, 16, you kind of start to get that question of like, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And as at that age, no one should be deciding what they're doing, and especially not for the long run. But I looked at the things that made me most happiest. I loved shopping. It was a way for me to communicate who I was in a very big family. I loved art and I loved people. And so I thought, well, let's just take myself down that route. And that was fab, my values, this is what I was interested in. And I went to a great university and had fun. I traveled, I worked hard, and I went to some great places. But just as I was growing up into 20s, 25s, 27s, more older, my values, I just realized, were just changing. I didn't like clothes. I didn't like the way that I was creating something that just made people buy more. And my interests as a human, as a professional, as an adult were also evolving and developing and moving me away from that. And so I found myself feeling incredibly alone in this place where I realized that I was waking up every day and not enjoying what I was doing, what my work was moving towards, the people I was with. And so for me, there was this incredible sense of loneliness. While again, a bit like what Dan said, when you look at other people and everyone's kind of moving on and people are buying houses and having kids and promoted and they seem to be kind of going in a trajectory, I just had hit a block. I just realized that something had to change. And then I went on this quest, or the next journey, and mine was just about pivoting. So trying something, hitting a wall, that's not working, turning around, hitting another wall, and just it's been this kind of this long process of finally aligning with something. And I've always thought of it as a bit like a combination lock. If you've got four numbers, and I've slowly over time, when I've hit a different wall and pivoted into something different, that all of a sudden the lock has now it feels like it's almost there. It feels like it's come undone. It feels like there's a sense of flow. And so that's kind of taken my work into now communication training. It's like a long way from whatever I thought I would ever come from. And that feeling of that alone has now feels like a sense of alignment. And I think for me, I work a lot around nonverbal communication and body language. So I'm using the body as a tool for my understanding. And so I think a lot of helping us create or make those decisions to feel aligned, we start to feel it, and helping people get a real felt sense of something that feels right. And when something feels right, things start to work, things start to open up. So it's been fabulous talking with Nicola and Dan over the last 12 months or so about our own journeys and how differently we come from it. So I come from it from a very physical sense. And yeah, it's been difficult. It's been tough over this time. However, making sure that the practicality is there, but also my physicality is there. So we'll be talking about energy in a bit. So that's who I am. I'm super happy now on my second journey, and the path is opening up.
And that's something I've really learned from Ben, because I was living so in my head. I couldn't even tell you what I was feeling. And I remember doing a session with Ben on embodiment. He's like, well, just move how you want to. And I said, I don't know how to. I'm used to being in a class where I'm told to do this or that. And I was like, oh, I think I'm going to do a downward dog. And it felt like this huge step forward of like, oh, I'm actually starting to feel things rather than always being in my head. So 102 weeks since I changed my career and 6 months, as I mentioned, since our last webinar, and I thought it would be interesting to reflect back on what's been working and what hasn't. And I just realized that aside from coaching, not one of the things I do now is what I thought I'd be doing. And to the extent that I was telling a friend about some of the stuff I've been doing, and she started laughing, and I was like, what's so funny? And she said, I remember you going to an interview in your early 20s to work for a recruitment company, and you came storming back into the flat and you were like, I hate recruitment. I am never, ever going to work in that industry. And now I am partner at a recruitment firm, do 3 days a week there, and I absolutely love it. Who would have thought it? But I think one of the things that I was most scared about when I made that change was money and financial stability. It's very much a family thing, always be working, always be earning. And I think the thing that I found so reassuring on this is having some rocks in my life where I've got predictable work now, where I know I have some regular income that I can live off. And that means I feel comfortable layering in various experiments and projects. And it also means I can treat them very much as an experiment. I'm giving myself permission to fail. So testing things, may not be earning any money at the moment, but I think they could be in the future. And sometimes just playing around with things that I think are quite interesting and letting them go if they don't work and being comfortable with that. And if I am enjoying them, just seeing where they might take me. I think what I found the most challenging, though, is that guilt of not working 9 till 6. So what I've really struggled with is giving myself freedom, which is something that I really, really wanted to do. I wanted to set up my life so I did have that flexibility. I could work 3 days a week, 4 days a week if I wanted to, and have that time to spend with friends and family. And the other day I was out for a coffee with a friend in the afternoon. And I said, God, I really feel like I'm skiving off. I feel so guilty. And she pointed out, well, who are you skiving off from? Yourself? And it was such a moment. I was like, oh yes, that's okay. That's what I want to be doing. But I still do feel really bad if I'm not working on that sort of classic 9 to 6, Monday to Friday. So that's something I'm really trying to work on. Dan, the award winner, how have you found the last 6 months? You said you had a bit of a wobble 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, I mean, I sort of thinking back about when I decided to make the big change, I think it's really important to understand your own way of reacting and dealing with the world. So because I had so many kids, well, have so many kids, and financial responsibilities, a huge thing for me was money. So I knew I couldn't do it until I paid for it. So that became my focus. So I knew I was going to leave long before I actually did. And one of the things I was just going to touch on about that is deciding that I remember the day I told myself, I said out loud that I was going to leave. And it was a huge moment, just admitting it to myself. It changed my intention. It took away the pressure and stopped me hating what I was doing. I wasn't hating it, but it took away a lot of the pain because I knew I was in a kind of transitional phase. I didn't have to have it all figured out. I just had to kind of, number one, accept that I wanted to do it. And then I began to dream. And the second thing I did was, well, what am I going to do? Like, what if I could do anything? What would I do? And I found that incredibly important. Because if you don't allow yourself to dream what you're going to do, there's no way you're going to get there. And you might not know, but I was lucky in that I had a very clear sense that I wanted to write again because I've been running a company. I hadn't really been writing very much. And I just started to imagine, what would my life be like? What would my day be like? What would I be doing if I was doing the thing I really wanted to do? And sort of unbeknownst to me, that was when I began to create the path to what I'm doing now. And my life now is pretty much that exact dream, except I don't have as much money as I thought I would have, and I don't have as much time, and I'm not as healthy. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like my life is perfect, but the way I look at it is I spent my first journey solving the wrong problems, and I'm spending my second journey solving the right problems. And my definition of a wrong problem is something where even if you fix it, it won't make a demonstrably positive impact to your life as a whole. So like getting a promotion or a bit of extra money or succeeding in a career that you find unfulfilling, you're spending your whole time solving the wrong problems. Whereas now I'm solving the right problems. I'm trying to solve the right problems, which is how do I earn money doing a thing that I'm really good at, that I love doing, that doesn't feel like work. And so I haven't cracked that over the last 6 months at all. I'm still worrying about money. I'm still thinking, oh God, everything's fine until, March or April. I always have a baseline amount of money for every month. And then however much money I've got in the bank, I divide by that amount. And that's basically my runway. I mean, that's actually how you run a company. So that was kind of the same kind of mindset. So that hasn't become cured or fixed, but my state of mind is completely different. Because I'm prioritizing the things that I care about and I'm doing the things that give me meaning, I can tolerate that uncertainty far better than I thought I was going to be able to do beforehand. And a huge part of the second journey is that you fear with the change from the first journey. It's like by definition, you can't see how you're going to feel when you've made the jump. And when you make the jump, your perspective changes. And that's something that I wish I'd taken on board more. So yeah, so my last 6 months has been amazing. It's been incredibly rewarding. I've done incredible things. I haven't fixed all the things I was worried about, but my capacity and ability to cope with that is now 1,000 times more solid than it was before. And I'm beginning to think that's the real gift of the second journey. It's not that it solves all your problems. It's not that it creates your dream reality, but it completely changes the way you inhabit your own mind. And it gives you perspectives and freedom. So your kind of baseline of well-being just increases gradually. And it might sound counterintuitive for that to be increasing while you're still worried about the same old shit. But I've realized in my life, however much money I have or don't have, I worry about it the same. The amount of worry doesn't change. It's just the way I perceive it that changes. So that's sort of where I am. I haven't figured it all out, but I've figured out that if I spend my life trying to figure out the right problems, which is for me, create fulfillment, meaning, connection with nature. I'm volunteering. I'm chair of a charity that runs a local preschool. I'm doing things that give me a sense of well-being, that I'm contributing to where I live, and I'm creatively fulfilled, and I'm working on my relationships, and I'm doing all the stuff that you can't really. There are no badges for this stuff on LinkedIn, right? But they have completely changed the way I feel about myself. So that's the way I'm taking it, and it is beginning to work, and I'm starting to get stuff coming back. And I have no doubt that they're connected. And I feel like I have real promise. Yeah, I feel like I was before, I was not quite sure what was going on, and now I feel like I'm still not entirely sure, but I'm much more comfortable about the direction I'm moving in.
Dan, I think you might get another promotion soon.
An internal promotion, yeah, thanks.
An internal promotion. I think that whole mindset piece is so important. Like one thing that lots of people have said, and I feel, is whenever I talk about what I'm doing now work-wise, I smile. I can't help it because I really love it all. And I think one of the reasons that I knew it was time for me to shift was because I was bored and I was just really grumpy and I just wasn't a very nice version of myself. And I really didn't like that. I just felt constantly edgy. Whereas now, one of the things I wanted to do was free up more time. I definitely haven't done that, but I really do love everything I'm doing and they all make me smile. There's no element of it where I go, I wish I could get rid of that part. It's like, it's all fun and it's all interesting. Ben,
I think
you definitely smile when you talk about work.
Yeah, I think there's something about the saying yes to yourself part. The bit where you're kind of going in and you're solving the wrong problems for people you don't want to. I think that it's a real opportunity to kind of reflect on what it is that you're wanting or what you're needing and feeling into that. And for me, I think when I speak to both Nicola and you, Dan, it's that variety that kind of keeps it interesting. Trying a bit of this, doing a bit of that, doing a bit of volunteer work, also doing that. I know, Dan, you're also with your kids bored at school as well. So I think that there's an opportunity when you start to say yes to yourself that you start to learn more about what it is that makes you tick and self-awareness and self-knowledge. And I think that's the beautiful part about the second journey of that kind of concept of shifting into something that feels more aligned with you it's a really reflective learning process. And I think that all humans love that part where we feel like we're learning. And if we're learning more about ourselves, we also then start to know what makes us feel good and gives us energy, and what doesn't, and starting to kind of navigate towards the things that make us feel good and give us energy. I found with when I was working in the fashion work, it just drained constantly, whether it was physically or mentally or just emotionally, just like, I don't want to be here. And that never put me in a good place to work. And as soon as I like the handing in your notice moment, the moment when you know that there's a light at the end of the tunnel, when you think that things are going to change or know things are going to change, all of a sudden there's more space and more freedom that can be explored. And for me, again, just I'm really about, I love the physicality. You've got the practicalities of the conversations that you need to have, but also the physicality, because I realized that the things that when I wasn't enjoying them, were just draining my energy. And so making sure that I was looking after myself and the things that I was doing, they were the things that even if I was tired, I'd still have the energy to get up and go after them. There are many wobbles along the way. I think that for me, I found also that habitually you mentioned about being skiving off or being naughty around your boss, that you were taking this time off. We're just used to this 9 to 5, but there are other ways. And I think, again, having people around you to talk to about this and support you on this just gives you an opportunity for a bit of that support, for making these, when you're going through the difficult part, and finding the work that starts to populate the calendar, so you're actually doing the things that you're enjoying more, and taking more time for you in that process.
And Ben, one of the questions that came up quite a bit when people were registering for this was, how did you know what you wanted to do next? And you touched on this a little bit on the intro, but how did you end up realizing that this was the space you wanted to be in?
I went back and reassessed what my values were. What did I want to be kind of working in? And people were always part of that. And the creativity part, and the bit that really surprised me is the communication, because I never liked public speaking, never liked standing up. But it was an iterative process where I would do something and it would just feel right to be in that space. And then I also tried to do different things, and doors would shut and it wouldn't make me feel good. And so it took a little bit of time of trying something, reiterating, orientating to something different, and just finding that process that just feels right. And I think we have that sense of flow when we find the things that are starting to get there, starting to make sense. But it takes time, and you need a bit of space from work, and you need a bit of reflection and an ability to reflect and just sense into when things feel right.
Yeah, I think that's so true. And someone gave me some really great advice, which was, you have to let go before you can work out what's next. And, I think, as I was saying, that first month, I was so conscious of what everyone else must be thinking about me, because obviously they were only ever thinking about what I was doing next. And every time someone said, "Oh, so you've left, what are you doing next?" Cue immediate reaction that they were judging me, and they thought I was mad, and that they also knew that I was never going to get another job, and that I was an absolute disaster at marketing. And that's why I left, because I was incapable of doing it. And I would spend, probably incredibly boring for anyone listening, but it was probably 5 to 7 minutes explaining why I'd done this. And the most frequent piece of feedback, well, you are going to go back to full-time marketing. And I would say, I don't know what I'm going to do. I don't know. And the reactions were so interesting. And I realized that in hindsight, that often those people were just interested, or even to a degree projecting, thinking, oh, maybe I should be thinking about this. But instead, I took it all internally and determined that that meant that I was totally crazy, and what on earth was I thinking? But at the same time, it made me realize, like, later on, that it was just about what felt right for me. And as an example, I did some fractional work early on. I didn't feel it was the right thing to do, but I was panicking about money, so I did it. And I did it for 6 months and then realized it was not a fit, and it was not an environment I wanted to be in. So I resigned from that. I was like, I'm not doing fractional anymore. And then a different fractional role came up, which I'm now doing. And lots of people said, don't take it on, Nicola, you've just got too much. But it's one of the best things I could have ever done. It's technology that supports the police. It's working with violence against women and girls. It's something that's really important to me. And I want to make the time for it because I really feel that the work I'm doing, the team I'm working with is super empowering. It's just exactly the sort of role that I wanted. And it was also about not having a fixed mindset, not saying, no, I don't do fractional, that's it. It's taking each opportunity for what it is and deciding on that one, how you really feel about doing it. Dan, what about you? How on earth did you end up where you are?
Well, for me, it's about compass. I always think about it in directional terms, which is even, I mean, I did know what I wanted to do. And I do this, I talked about this a bit last time. My obsession with my kids is helping them find their compass. Like, I feel like my job as a parent is I've got to help them figure out what gets them into a flow state and what really energizes and excites them about the world. And then I tell them to just head in that direction. And I think that's the best advice. It's very often the thing we think we should be doing is facing in one direction, and who we really feel we are is in the other direction. And for me, it's enough to be moving in the direction towards the thing you think is right for you and be playful and not hold on to anything too tightly and just kind of see where you end up. Like I had a friend who was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm going to leave and I'm going to go and train and become a teacher." And I was like, well, that sounds amazing. Why don't you go and volunteer in a school and see if you like it? And she did. And she came back and she was like, I fucking hated it. It was horrible. There was no resources. All the teachers were complaining. And it's that kind of thing. It's like, don't dive in too hard. Just kind of certainty can be really helpful if you really know in your bones what you need to be doing and where you want to be going. If you don't have certainty, you just need to try stuff out. And Nicola, you have been brilliant at this in the time that we've been talking about second journey stuff. Is like you're always trying new things, and then you'll hit on one that works, and you'll go all in on that thing. And I think it's that approach, but it's all about the compass. It's like, how do you sit quietly and figure out which direction your compass is in? And you've just got to be super aware that you've probably spent your whole life telling yourself that going in that direction is self-indulgent, wasteful, not meaningful, not important. And you almost have to kind of, it's like immersion therapy. You have to sort of allow yourself to believe you can do the thing that you really feel like you want to do or go in the direction you really want to go in. And then I find the path appears as you move into it. So the key is movement. You have to move in the direction of the compass that you think is right. Be prepared to move back. But if you kind of act in that direction, then I think you're much more likely to stumble on, or serendipity will appear and something will happen and you'll start to get directed in that way. And that's definitely what's happened to me, because I knew I wanted to write and I wanted to finish this novel, but I'm now doing work that I would never have really considered because the research for the novel showed me something about the world which I hadn't fully appreciated. And now I'm really intrigued by this subject that I've been researching. And and I don't really know where that's going to go, but I'm following my curiosity in the sense that I'm interested in it. And I am earning money because I've got this theory that if you show up as yourself, then the people that are looking to find you, to pay you to help them, can find you. But if you're not doing that and you're being the person you think you should be, then they're wandering around looking for you and they can't find you because you're not appearing in the way you need to be appearing for them to find you. So that's become my obsession really, is how do I not be self-indulgent or an egotist, but let myself be guided by my sense of curiosity and what I'm interested in, and share that. And yeah, I think everybody has a sense of which way their compass is pointing that they want to go in. And I think that's all you need to begin with. You just need a sense of which direction, and then the confidence to back yourself. It's okay to do it. It's not self-indulgent. And the best thing is that if you do that, you become better at everything else. I'm a better husband, father, son, friend than I ever was, like to Nicola's point. I wasn't kind of marinating my brain in this resentment and frustration that I was doing the wrong thing. And so everything's a bit lighter, and wobbles, you can get out of them more quickly. And because you're not draining your energy all the time by doing this thing that it's like a hole below the waterline in a boat, right? You've got to fill up that fucking hole, man, or your energy is pouring away into this thing that's just not who you are. So
And I
yeah.
think one of the, talking about going in the direction of your compass, I think using, a startup term is what's your MVP? So I've done loads of experiments, and a lot of them are just, they've been, I don't think I've regretted any of them because I've learned something from them all, and some have worked and some haven't worked. So I do a lot of coaching one-to-one, but I did a course on group coaching, and I was like, oh, I think this could be a big thing. And I did a few sessions for free, and it was really fun. But I realized to try and actually create a paid for scenario around that just wasn't going to work, and it was going to be a huge amount of effort. Instead, I just want to have that as another skill set I have, and something that maybe I can build into other work I do. And it's super useful skills. One that I'm doing at the moment is I'm co-host of a podcast, totally out of my comfort zone. But I thought, right, let's just do it. 6 episodes, give it a go. And because I'm co-host the company that is hosting it, they do all the editing and all that stuff, which I couldn't do. And I was like, well, let's just give it a go. And actually, it's quite fun. I don't know that I'll do another one, but I'm really enjoying it. And it's really good for my confidence and like making sure that I can have good flow in conversations and lots of other benefits to it. But I have no expectations of it apart from, oh, I'm just going to see what happens. And I think I have to put that label on it. I have to just put experiment. I'm a marketeer. This is just a test. And then I can just stop it. And that helps me just go with things rather than overanalyzing them, which is something I used to do. Pros and cons, big list. It's like, it feels okay. I'm just going to go with it.
Yeah. If I could just jump in and actually just answer something that Liz has kind of spoken in there. She said, Dan, I'm interested in how you find opportunities to reach out or just trust the universe. If I might just jump in on that, is that you need to be doing something. I think there's a bit of both in the sense of the universe will teach you and show you. However, you have to be going out and finding new things. A couple of things in the chat, but also Nicola, what you just mentioned about out of your comfort zone. We become very comfort orientated, and actually the things outside of our comfort zone, they're just unfamiliar to us. So it's about going out there and finding those things. So I think there is both a bit of actively reaching out, talking to people in your network, see what conversations feel good, see what topics, opportunities are there. But only when you get there do you realize that there's so much more, like so many other doors start to open up. And I think for me, the universe part and the trust in the universe is that you will be showed, whether it's a failure or success, what you need to know and what you need to learn. And let's all remember that our mistakes are the bits where we learn the most. So we almost don't want to not make mistakes, but allow them to be part of that process because it will be helping us guide towards it. So I thought that, and there was a bit on the experiments as well. For me, there's a very, very simple thing when it comes to taking a piece of work. Is this thing fun? And am I going to really enjoy it and feels really aligned with what I'm doing? Is it going to teach me something new? I'm going to learn new skills and it's fascinating of what I'm kind of the topics that I'm working with. Or is it well paid? And as long as it matches at least two of them, whether it's well paid and I'm learning something, but it's not that fun, fine, I'll do it for a little while. Maybe it's something that's super fun, learning lots, but it's not that well paid. Okay. Anytime that it's only one of those things, then I know that that job is definitely a quick, I'm not getting involved with that. But I think you need to be out there. I think you need to kind of be trying things, iterating. And I found so many times things never worked out, but that was great. Process of elimination is also really powerful.
I could chip in on that, and in terms of trusting your instincts. When one of the reasons I left my business was because years and years and years ago, I read about Gandhi's definition of happiness, which is where what you do, say, and think are the same thing. And I couldn't do that in my job. I think Liz, you put in something about C-suite context, right? No fucking way can you do that in there unless you're a what's the word? Like some kind of psychopath, right? I mean, there's that brilliant book about how companies behave like psychopaths. So if you can't, it's very hard to do it in that environment. So that's my test. Is I'm open to doing things which might not feel completely right for me, as long as what I do, think, and say are the same thing. So I've been not waiting, but I've had a lot of stuff just come to me. And more recently, I've started to do more outreach. And I found that very uncomfortable until I applied that test. So I'm doing outreach in a way where what I do, think, and say is the same thing. And so I think that's how you do it, because you have to live in alignment with the technology and the context that you're living within, right? Unless you have private income, then you've got to be open to doing things that make you feel a bit awkward, that you might not love to do. But as long as they're fulfilling your own test and they don't make you feel compromised, that's been how I've navigated it. I did a talk recently for Saudi publishers in London, and it was a very weird environment. All the women were at the back of the room, all the men were at the front. I took some books and I gave one to a woman, and one of the men just took it off her. And I felt really, really compromised about doing that, until I got messages from some of the women who'd been at the event, asking for advice and saying it had been really useful. So I think, if you want to earn some money, sometimes you're going to have to do things that you don't feel that comfortable with. But as long as you feel like you're still being authentic to yourself and there's meaning in it and value in it, then I think it's okay. But you know what? We all got to eat, right? So maybe you have to be a bit flexible with some of that stuff.
Yeah, super wise. I'm just really conscious of time, which has just flown by, and we'd love to hear from some of you. So please do pop a note in chat or raise your hand if you'd be happy to share some of your stories. Katie, I know you were happy to share a little bit about yours, so I was wondering if you just tell us a little bit about where you are.
Yeah, sure. And yeah, just thank you for creating this forum, because I think so much of what you said on the last call and on this one resonates. And I think particularly like the piece around trusting intuition. I mean, a little bit about my story is that I guess I've been in sort of full-time work until 2 years ago, when due to the start of I was with missing its funding round, I embarked on a consulting journey which suited me really well, and I was actually just dead excited to not be in that full-time modality. But what happened is that it actually coincided within a week of starting my company. It also marked the end of like a 10-year relationship, and so suddenly like all of these aspects of my life are up in a sense of chaos and uncertainty. And it's been interesting speaking with other women who have started businesses, who've had similar experiences. And so I think the themes around like trusting intuition, understanding what to do next, but also learning has been a huge one. I think on this, for the last couple of years, I don't think I've ever read as much in my life. But I think like when you're thinking about going back to basics, who do I want to be for the next 20 years, and what should those components look like? There's been like a real rebuilding, and I think I've never felt such a strong sense of community as well. And sort of that reaching out, finding others that are doing the same thing, I think is a real characteristic of anyone on the founder or sort of self-employed journey. And I think unlike maybe some people on the call, I do see myself potentially going back into corporate at some point. But I think the mindset now that I have when it comes to the decisions I'll make, but also I think maybe the level of seriousness with which I will commit myself to a single skill or path forward has sort of changed, because I think in amid this sort of sense of chaos of the last 2 years, I've done a lot of stuff. Like I'd literally just graduated from a master's at that beginning. I've done a coaching qualification. I've done a bunch of like fractional CMO roles as well. But I think, and I sent Nicola a passage from Robert Greene's Mastery, which I've just started reading. And the bit that really resonated was, I mean, it's talking about apprenticeships, so suitable for like people early on in their career, but it just resonated so much. And it's the passage says, "You're finally on your own, on a voyage in which you'll craft your own future. You do not choose apprenticeships that seem easy. You'll move towards challenges that will toughen and improve you." And I think that just felt like really, like it's characterized both my approach and sort of mindset. But there's just basically, there's no one going to come and like give you the blueprint of what you do next with all of these different facets of your life. You really have to trust your intuition, hopefully find amazing forums like this where a lot of us are sort of navigating what that looks like, and yeah, see how it all plays out.
Thank you so much, Katie. And I love that passage. So thank you very much for sharing that too. Lindsay, I was wondering if you'd share a little bit too, because I know you've been doing some very different work, but
yeah, I'm Lindsay, and yeah, when you said week 102 or whatever, Nicola, was like, oh, how many weeks has it been for me? So I gave up full-time senior marketing CMO type work at the March this year, so I'm still relatively early on in my journey. And yeah, I mean, so much of what's been said resonates about just that feeling of I was just really burnt out by it, and my contract ended. At the same time as that, my mum also passed away, so I had a bit of a life change. I turned 50 last year, and there was all these things culminating within my head to say, right, I need to just stop this. I couldn't actually see myself at that point going back into the same type of marketing work, though I still have a passion for it and I still remain sort of interested in it. So I've not ruled out doing marketing work, but it would need to be the right marketing work and not a full-time job with a sort of full-time commitment. But meanwhile, the things that have really helped me, because, you know, I think we all are such busy people that actually when you're not busy, it's when all these doubts come in about, oh my goodness, what have I done? You know, what am I going to be doing for the rest of my life? How do I fill my time? How do I cope with all this space I've now got? Rather than being able to go, this is great, I can enjoy it. You're sort of wrought with anxiety, which I was for the first few months. But I at the moment I do volunteering for a group of English speakers and people who are learning English, I should say, which is just absolutely fascinating. I think what drove me, it was back to sort of think, well, what do I enjoy? Where do I feel at my best? I'm naturally extroverted. I'm very interested in people. I just wanted to meet some new people. I wanted to meet people that I wouldn't have the opportunity to meet in a corporate, private sector marketing career. And so I've certainly done that. So meeting people who are new to this country, learning about what's motivated them to come and live here, you know, people's experiences. It's just been absolutely fascinating. I'm also training to be an advisor with Citizens Advice, which again is similar. So again, what have I always been interested in, but never really had the time to explore? Social issues, social justice, how that affects people in the day-to-day, and I'm conscious that I am using this. So while it all feels quite new, if you've worked in business for 25 years, you have so many transferable skills. Be super confident that if you can walk into a boardroom and handle, you know, that toxic environment that somebody mentioned in relation to always having to, you know, ask for budget and justify this and prove your results, you can handle many, many situations. So it's actually quite challenging because there's so much to learn, but just the opportunity to meet different people. I'm also working as a support worker, so very practical. I'm doing a minimum wage 0 hours contract, if you like. I just tell them when I'm available, supporting 2 young women who are just moved into their own homes, which again, for me, it's all about these relationships and just having the opportunity to do new things. And meanwhile, at the other end of the scale, I'm also a trustee of a charity, and I am looking for a kind of board position, ideally paid, because I still have the sense of I'd like to earn money doing what I've built a career on doing. And so I'm looking for board roles, but not in the private sector, or if it was private sector, it would need to be something that really resonates with me. So I guess all of this, but it's about that feeling, and I think it's been willing to try different things, be comfortable with awkwardness, which is not easy. And I think maybe in the middle of the summer when I was trying so many different things, I remember I was walking in to meet somebody new that I was going to be supporting, and I was thinking, oh my God, I think I've just had too much newness in my life. I don't know if I can handle another new experience where I'm having to go and introduce myself and make an impression. But but you persevere and you keep at it. And I think it's you need a good support network round about you for sure. And you need to be really, really kind to yourself. And yeah, so that's me.
Love that, persevere. That was my school motto. And sometimes I think perseverer. But yeah, Katie and Lindsay, you both touched on something that's been so critical to me, is having that network and that safe space where you can share how you're feeling, the ups and downs, the challenges, the failures, the opportunities, and know that everyone else is in the same space and they're not judging you. Just to go back to you, Dan, you know, you're a little bit further ahead than me on my 102 weeks and Lindsay on her 38 weeks, who's managing to have done so much already. I'm quite in awe. If you knew what you knew now, going back, what would be a couple of things that you'd have done differently?
Gosh, I mean, I don't regret the way it worked out, but I would have gone earlier. Like, I would have gone way earlier. I now realize I knew a long, long time ago that I was sort of not doing it for somebody else, but I love the thing about Carl Jung's thing is that you go out into the world trying to succeed with definitions of success, meaning, and contentment that you accept from the world around you when you're young, and you're too young to critically sort of interrogate them. And I definitely did that. And then the second journey is when you realize those definitions are wrong and you've got to define your own. And that's what the point of the second journey is to go on that journey of exploration to define what success, meaning, and contentment are for you. So yeah, in retrospect, I can see that I could have done it earlier and it would have been easier to go earlier. I think that's a really big lesson for me, actually. You think you've left it too late, but imagine your life 10 years down the road thinking if you could go back 10 years, would you? And I'm like, I'm bitten your fucking arm off. Which is not to say I'm not proud of what I did or any of those things, but yeah, like you've got to switch that around in your mind. If you think you've left it too late, my God, you need to move because it won't seem it in the future. That I think that Lay just spoke. The thing about being kind. Oh my God, being kind to yourself is so important when you're doing this because it really feels like it's you against the world. And I would have been kinder to myself, I think for sure. But because of my kids and being the sole breadwinner, I really victimized myself and like I tried to sort of not martyr myself, but it's like I have to do this. This is my role as a man, and I've got to provide and be this person for everybody. And I went through that longer than and in retrospect, I did that bit too much. And I should have clocked earlier that being kinder to myself made me better for everybody in that context. It made me better for everybody around me. So yeah, I think those are the things that, be courageous, do it when you're young and be like ultra kind to yourself, I think is great advice.
The kindness is so important. I remember, again, going back to network, sitting down with a friend in those early few months, and I said to her, oh my God, I'm such an epic failure. Like, I have no job, I have no kids, I'm single. This is just like, what the hell am I except a complete disaster? And she went, you've got so much freedom, Nicola. It's amazing. What are you going to do with it? And you've got all of this network to support you and all of this great experience. You can just do whatever. And that for me was a real turning point. So I was like, okay, I need to reframe this for myself. I have got freedom and I've got to embrace that versus thinking about all the things I don't have. Ben, what about you?
I think they're not the bit around feeling alone, I think is the toughest part. And having, when I speak to other people, I've got really good friends that just feel like they're caught up and they haven't enjoyed their job for a while. They're wanting to do something, but they'll also just have those moments of doubt. And I think, surrounding yourself with other people that are going through the same process, or at least talking about it. I think for me that maybe a bit what Dan mentioned around the kind of the belief system that things would be sorted out, the path was at this age, this was going to happen, and I was going to hit this milestone by 30, and by 32 this is, and it just letting go of that I think is the bit which gives me freedom. Yeah, I think just speaking about it and sharing about it, and we're all kind of going through this, and actually probably knowing that there is no destination. It's just a continual evolution, and things keep opening. It's not kind of moving from island A to island B. It's more just now you just set sail, and then I don't know what's going to happen in the future, and bad things are going to happen, and you're just going to have to deal with it, and things are going to change. And so flexibility and adaptability, and yeah, just holding things lightly. Just
Think of it
try.
as an adventure. I love that.
Absolutely.
James has just shared some really nice advice, which was stay away from the negativity, which I think is really, really valuable. So we just wanted to share something. I think two things that I found super helpful in my first 6 months was, one, I had an amazing network, and in particular Dan and Ben, who kept me sane, and also some amazing people I work with, like James, who's here and just shared that advice, who deals with my meltdowns on a frequent basis very calmly. And the second thing was I was very lucky in that I had a coach who'd been through this about 10 years before, and he gave me some really good frameworks and ways of thinking about things. He helped me really work out what my values were, what I was scared of, and also held me accountable, because it's so easy to let these things slip. You can say, yeah, I want to do, oh yeah, I'll just keep putting it off. I'll keep doing busy nonsense and occupying myself with that, and avoid actually dealing with this kind of hole in me that just things don't feel right. And so what we've been working on is a course that we're going to be running for a small group of people next January. And it's going to be over 6 months. It's going to be a class a month and then a group a month, because I think the most important thing about this is having that safe space and that network to share all of your concerns and your excitement, but also to hold each other accountable. And it doesn't matter what you're agreeing to do. It could be I'm going to resign, or it could be something tiny like I'm going to go to an improv class, which is one of the things I did this year, which was one of the most terrifying things I did, but brilliant. So it doesn't matter how big it is, but it's just having that group that you feel really safe with, and that you know that once a month you're going to be gathering to all be in the same space and talk about this stuff. Dan, do you want to share a little bit more about it?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm a huge believer in not presenting yourself as an expert. And like we have sort of been figuring this out between us, but we have come across things that have been really, really effective, which we think can really help people. And the way we sort of presented it in our own minds is there are sort of three elements to it. There's like the prize, why you want to change. There's the pain, which is kind of where you are now. And then it's the path between the two. And if I reverse engineer what we did, all of us did in different ways, we come to it from very different perspectives, which is why we think this could be super helpful for people. Is that's kind of how we navigated it. It was learning to articulate where you wanted to go, coming to terms with why you're in a position of struggle, where does that come from, why you're leaning into that struggle, and then how do you get from where you are to where you want to be. And yeah, I mean, it's just been so great for us. We've been checking in with each other kind of weekly. And it's just brilliant to have a group of people around you who are kind of going through the same thing. So that's the sort of the template for it. But also it's going to be quite practical. Like I'm really into the compass idea. I'm really into flow states. I think I can really help people figure out what they want to do and where they want to go. So I think between us, we've got good skill sets. But it is an experiment. But we think there just isn't enough support for people doing this. And we're like the vanguard. I think about my parents, one job for life. My kids are going to have so many different jobs. And we're the sort of first kind of generation that have been sold the idea of a job for life, whom by the time you get to sort of 40s and 50s, either you don't want to do it, or you're not wanted in doing what you were doing, or everything's changing around you so fast. Just think we need some handrails. We need some people around us who've done it, who can help us on that journey, because I think we're all going to be on it, whether we like it or not. So that's the logic behind it. And as I say, we all come at it from different angles. And Ben, you've got a really important perspective on it, which has really helped me and Nicola. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, thank you. There's practicalities, there's frameworks, there's mindsets, but there's also the very physical experience of doing this, right? The change calorific, it's energy draining. And so for me, I think what's really helpful is to really take care of the physicality. We've talked a little bit about intuition, so that kind of felt sense. So really starting to be able to tap into the body and kind of feel what things feel right. Flow states, opening up, the feeling of things kind of feeling big, expansive, and feel good. But then also the kind of, even the nuts and bolts of developing strong energy, because setbacks or rejections or the resilience to keep pushing through when things get tough. We've all got busy schedules, maybe family, we've got lots of responsibilities. And so to then have to then do this change on top of everything else needs a certain level of energy. So one part of the course that I'll be running and looking at is something called the SHRED method. It's built on the famous SHED method, so sleep, hydration, exercise, and diet. I like to put an R in there for routine and rhythm. So sleep, hydration, rhythm, exercise, and diet. Like, how can we physically look after ourselves so that we feel good in the whole process? And the reason why we were talking about running just before we came on together was that Dan has, this is something that's really important, to go out on that run. And it's not just to do the 10Ks or the 5Ks or the however long, it's the feeling good about yourself, building self-esteem, then also the physical part of, sleeping better, eating better, looking after yourself, so you can continually have an energy that helps you show up every day as you're going through the process of change, because it's not easy. It's not having a good resource of energy will just help that process move easier and quicker and support you as a person. So that's my kind of point on it. I think the physicality, the lived experience, the body part of it is a big element to this process of change.
Connecting them all together. That was what I really struggled with. It's like when I did a Pilates class and the teacher said each part of you is quite strong, but none of them work together at all. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly it with like my brain and my intuition and my body. Yeah, it was brutal. I was in a class where the average age was 70. I was the worst in the class. I'm conscious that it's 2:00. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And we're going to keep doing these on a quarterly basis. So just webinars for us all to come together. And each time we'd love to hear more and more stories of how you're all getting on as well. So Lindsay and Katie, it'd be great to get updates from you too. We will send an email with any recommendations from the chat, so some of the books that were shared and the recording as well. But just thank you again for making time for this.